Kansas City to New York City, from planet Earth to extraterrestrial life in space, a podcast with no equal, engaged in unconventional warfare through your speakers and headphones. This is a show about embracing the suck, conquering your demons, and finding God in the face of adversity. Chris, Tonto Peranto.
Switch is on. Motherfucker, I'm gonna shoot you in the face.
Ian Scotto.
You know, Ian and I have been dating for a long time.
You are now tuned into the Battle Line Podcast.
The switch is on, Battle Line Podcast, and the funny thing is I said last show that we had a guest coming on that people never thought would be on the show, and I think like anybody who knows my history like knows who you are. So yeah, Navy SEAL sniper instructor, author, CEO of SoftRep.com, Brandon Webb.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like when you reached out, I was like, let's do this. And Chris knows that I said this to you on the phone. I said the same thing to Chris. I mean, we haven't spoken, but at the same point, I think there's like this perception that you and I hate each other or something, which is not the truth.
You know, Chris knows as well as I do. It's just, unfortunately, a lot of drama in the ex-military community. I don't know if it's because of, just the guys that aren't transitioning well. And I talk about this a lot. I was talking about this at my book signing last night. Actually, a woman asked me about memory and trauma. And she's like, how come you transition okay? And a lot of people don't transition well. And I don't know if you can relate to this, Chris, but I thought about that book, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and that, life is all about purpose. If you don't have purpose, then you kind of drift. And I think a lot of people that deployed to Afghanistan, I went to Afghanistan in 2001, right after the towers fell, and it felt very purpose driven. Like we were there the mission was clear, kill the bad guys, destroy the training camps, try and get bin Laden. And we mostly did that by middle of 2002. And I came back from that deployment and I felt like I did good work. I didn't have, war is terrible, but I felt there was purpose behind it. Now, fast forward to 2006 to when we pulled out, 20 years in Afghanistan, 100,000 troops, 90 billion we just left to the Taliban and equipment. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of guys get out of the military and they're struggling because they can't find a purpose for being in Afghanistan in 2010, losing friends, seeing and doing terrible things, and then you get out and it's like alcohol-fueled drama on the internet, and then the guys just love drama. Human nature, I think, just loves drama. Yeah. And then they're like, fucking Ian and Brandon must have a beef, And look, one of the reasons I'm like Chris and I were talking before we went live. I'm kind of half retired. I enjoy working and I will continue to work, but I'm winding down my companies. I sold Crate Club. I'm probably going to get ready to sell SoftRep in the next couple of years.
Which I didn't know that.
Because I want, I think it's the first time I've said it publicly, but
exclusive.
I want to spend more time with my kids. My kids are older. I started a business with my son. He's running it. He's a started a property tech business with artificial intelligence, and it's like taking off. I'm like, you're going to be a billionaire. Like, it's crazy, like how it's taken off. I just want to spend time with my kids, write, and live a good life. And that's kind of my new program. And look, I love what I've done after I left the military, but back to this whole drama issue, I almost traumatized myself with this journey at SoftRep because you were involved when you saw kind of Crate Club blowing up, and I just hired the wrong people. Like, I went back to business school. I went to this special program at Harvard and finished last year called Owner Presidents, like an entrepreneur's MBA. Because I'm like, what did I do wrong? And now I went back to school. I'm like, I hired just the wrong people for the wrong job.
I feel like there's a few different things because truthfully, and I was going to, like in preparing for this show, wanted to talk about, like, there was nothing cooler I think I've ever done in my career than like working for SoftRep when it was in its infancy.
Yeah.
Because it was like new uncharted territory. There was no site doing what we did. Then, truthfully, I mean, I never would have left if things didn't change, and I did feel like you, truthfully, started to lose some interest. And I felt like the thing that got us to a certain point was special operations and military veterans talking about their time in special operations. And then, I'm going to be honest, like, I'd come in every few months, and it would be like, we're doing a dog crate club. We're doing this thing.
The
and
thing
I was
the
like,
crate club
this is the best thing that we have. Why abandon it? That's why, if people want to know why I left, that's kind of a lot of it. So.
In hindsight, I agree with you 100%. The problem was, SoftRep was it's always been a great business. It's still a great business. I kind of got re-energized. We could talk about it later if you want, but we're doing a lot of stuff with AI and content.
You were into AI before a lot of people.
Yeah, but the Crate Club became this Godzilla in the closet. And Chris, this thing grew from 0 to 15 million revenue in almost 22 months, right? It just became a monster. And then you have like 3 boxes, 3 to 4 products per box. We're cutting checks for $500,000 orders, spending $1 million on Facebook ads every month. Like, it became a beast. And I'm like, it got out of control. And it was like, it just overshadowed SoftRep in a very negative way, right?
Yeah, and it felt like I could tell Chris, I mean, at these meetings, and look, a lot of the former SoftRep people who are probably listening understand where I'm coming from. It became SoftRep is like our cornerstone, awesome thing. We have writers who are volunteering with the Peshmerga. We have writers all over the globe this is like a little side thing, and our main thing is this crate club and and a million other ideas that you had.
It was meant to just like make a little bit of extra money in the e-commerce, and it just became out of control and got too big. And then I was used to running SoftRep in a media business, not juggling inventory and supply chains and negotiating with warehouses. And I'm like, and then it's like people are like, yeah, I'll do the job, and they had no experience doing the job. And look, I love Drew Dwyer, and we lost Drew.
We've spoke about many times on this show.
It's a tragedy. I worked with him when I was a GRS guy in Iraq, and I love Drew, but it just, he was it. And then the other thing is, a guy that that was working with me was also he had been a recovering addict and was covering for Drew. Like that, it took me a while, and I figured out this guy's got a addiction problem. Why have you been hiding it from me? Oh, well, I'm in the program, and I just wanted to do, I'm like, look, we're trying to run a business. Like, we can be compassionate and get him help, but he shouldn't be like in the role he's in, negotiating with vendors and overbuying. Like, we ended up, because of the Drew issue, having $2 million of extra inventory we didn't need.
And I remember hearing about that, and Chris heard about it. And here's the truth. Like, Drew is a great friend of mine, so I always have said to Chris, and I said this to him off air, like, I've always heard Drew's side of that stuff. I never really heard yours, but I do know, there were vendors who were pissed. I know that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I love Drew. He was one of the most squared away guys I worked with in Iraq. And I don't know what happened. I went to his wedding in Italy. I knew his wife. And I don't know if it was and look, the VA is terrible, right? I just did a visit a few weeks back. Just a terrible experience. And they will just prescribe you whatever, right? And I don't even know if they cross-check it, but I don't know what happened to Drew, but we lost him to addiction, and he was dead 6 months after I think we let him go, and it sucks, because he was he had a great heart. But again, it ultimately, I'm the CEO. It's my responsibility, and that's why I went back to school. I'm like, I need to really look at myself and figure out what happened, so I don't let this stuff happen again. And it's just the whole thing was tragic, and the best you can do is just learn from it and move on with your life. And I've been on the earth long enough now to know, like, none of us gets out unscathed, right? Like, life always throws stuff at you. You always have to deal with shit. I was like in Portugal last month. So I moved to Lisbon this year. And I'm like, wow, my life is really good. Like, I don't have any stress. I'm not dealing with this like American politics because they don't talk about it in Lisbon. And I'm like, okay, something's gonna happen. It's like, when's it gonna happen? But yeah, look, I mean, business. If anyone has run any business, big or small, they know it is tumultuous. You deal with people, and people inevitably have problems, and. I remember the first time I got sued that my friend was like, "Oh, well, welcome to entrepreneurship." It's like, oh, now you have a real business. You've been sued. So look, look at fucking Trump's been sued how many times and declared bankruptcy how many times? The guy's a billionaire, so it's just, it just comes with the territory. But back to what Chris and I were talking about, I'm just at a stage in my life where I just want to be there for my kids. I want to mentor my kids. I want to create content. I love SoftRep. The reason I want to sell it is just, so I can make sure it has a good home. We're talking to a couple different strategic news, like bigger news organizations that need that niche content. And look, SoftRep is still great. It's still kind of near to my heart because we've outlasted. We were the first, and we had a bunch of competition, and now we're kind of almost the last man standing. And we're doing a lot of cool stuff, like with artificial intelligence. Like we have like an AI journalist, essentially, and an analyst.
I saw it, yeah.
And if you look at our images lately, we're using Midjourney to create incredible like images that are really, really fit the stories. Whether it's China and Taiwan, or using AI to take a look at the Roman Empire and the lessons learned from Roman warfare and stuff like that. And we're getting this just like amazing images and a research tool out of GPT-4, and it's turned good writers into phenomenal writers. It's like my son's a machine learning coder. He codes in Python. And the way he uses GPT-4 is crazy. Like I've watched him type in a 500-word prompt to GPT about how to code. So it makes a good coder 10x, 1000x. I think it's just crazy what it can do. So it's exciting for what it's done to SoftRep. But it's just, I'm ready to take kind of like motor off into the sunset of my boat or airplane, whatever you want to call it. I know I keep looking at the screen.
Yeah, I want to make sure Chris jumps in with something.
No, I don't know. Look at the camera or the screen.
No, you keep you look whatever. I think I'm getting to a point where I can now shut up. Where I used to in the beginning, I'll tell you this: the beginning interviews, I forgot I was the interviewer, and I thought I was the interviewee, and I would overtalk the actual guest. I'm like, shit, I got to work on this. So speaking of having to, I got to work on training myself in AAR and figure out what I'm doing wrong. I do that after every episode. So it's so nice when somebody comes in, and most of our guests, the majority of them are like that. They'll talk because then I don't have to.
Yeah.
I don't want to. And it's so, but second all that, the merch, I get the merchandise, dude. That's why I don't do a lot of merchandise.
Yeah.
When I do a lot of these corporate speaking events, a lot of these people I do, all these companies, and they will tell you the best, most successful company out there with merchandise is somebody that has a warehouse full of stuff. You have to have stuff before you sell it. And it sounds like that with Crate Club when it went off, it's like, oh crap, we don't have enough stuff. We're getting too much. And I remember a lot of those guys, those corporate, and I learned from them. And also I don't do merchandise, but a few things because it can be a headache. But man, it's like, you got to have inventory. If you don't have inventory, you're f***ed, and pretty much you're pulling your hair out. But I think all you said is business wise, you could teach a lot of veterans about business. You've been through it. You've been on the bigger scale, and also where something grew too fast. But on the other side of the house too, with the purpose, and that's huge. We always had purpose in the military. We were given purpose. Even if we didn't want it, we had to have purpose. This is the op order. This is your purpose. I don't want it. F it. You were going. You got it. You have no choice. And when we leave the military, brother, I know you've seen this as well, is that nobody's giving us purpose anymore. We have to figure that out for ourselves. And I think that's where the transition guys have a hard time. Yeah. Is now we don't have the purpose to transition because we're not goal setting. And our goal setting turns into, now that it's too easy on this thing.
Yeah.
Our goal setting now is to tear each other up on social media.
Yeah.
And
that's a shame.
Yeah. It does. I get trolled. I got trolled a couple weeks ago on a like, and it used to piss me off. It really did. But back during the days when you and I were doing Crate Club together, right? But I also realized you can't do nothing about it. It comes with the territory.
Yeah,
it gives a shit.
It does come with the territory. But it bothers me in a couple different ways that I don't think the military, especially I would say the SEAL community and the special operations community, they don't do a great job helping guys transition and creating a strong alumni network. I have a stronger alumni network through Harvard than I do the SEAL teams, and that's a shame. The SEAL have an annual reunion. It's more like a drink fest and talk shit fest. And I just think it's a shame when I look at, I'm a private pilot. I love to fly airplanes. I'm in with this group of guys, our ex-fighter pilots from the Air Force, Navy. One guy, Bill, flies with us, has 400 hours
and is it
flying
still
the space shuttle.
Still the same hangar in California?
Yeah,
so they did get to sleep over there.
Yeah,
It's a cool,
Ian's seen it. It's a cool bunch of guys, and they have a strong alumni network. They respect each other. They support each other. And they have this like strong support network. They help each other get jobs. In the spec ops community, it's the opposite, and that's what I find. Just it's kind of a shame is that look, anyone in the public eye is going to get trolled, but to get like overly trolled by people from your own community.
Oh yeah, I mean there were people harassing you that wanted you people to show up at your house and stuff. I mean,
it's just a shame. Like people going after my kids.
Yeah, that's unsad.
That's unsad, And
you know what's weird too? I was gonna mention, and I definitely want to get into Glenn Doherty because since Chris is only here for a limited point, and that's such an important thing. But the inter-branch rivalry stuff, it was interesting to me as an outsider who came in because a lot of it is just having fun and like joking about each other, and the Rangers are better and the SEALs are better. But I noticed like when I came into SOFREP, there were certain people with like a hostility towards. And I'll give you an example here, but it was very real because when I said that people think Brandon and I hate each other, which we don't, but we haven't spoken for years, the people that like you really don't like are some of the same people I really don't like. And I won't say names, but like remember there was a writer at SOFREP who every fucking picture he had to write not a SEAL, and everything had to say not a SEAL. And it's like, dude, you realize you're working for a company run by a Navy SEAL, and everything you write is disrespecting the SEALs, like something you're proud to be a part of. It was, what are you doing? And there were people like that who I did see were very like they had no gratitude for like being brought onto the site.
A lot of what, looking back in hindsight, a lot of the, I would say, all of the major issues I had with writers and employees were they had a substance abuse issue. It was drugs or alcohol, like every one of them. Because I was like, what did I do wrong? I'm trying to like, they all show up, hat in hand. They want an opportunity. They want a book deal. They want me to help them get a book. They want me to give them a job. And I have a soft spot in my heart for veterans. And at that point, I was inexperienced as a business professional, and so I give them a job and then expect them to behave professionally, like you can in the military, right, Chris? You just have that. It creates that environment that just commands respect and trust.
Yeah.
And you do have those layers of leadership that if somebody steps out of line, you're going to get your dick smacked.
Yeah.
But there were also people who
in the business world, we can't do that. We can't.
Yeah,
if somebody steps out of line, that's an EO complaint. That's no way. You're going to get sued. It's like you can't just say, "Hey, motherfucker."
But I was going to say there were even people who thought like that their military resume had anything to do with their resume as a writer, or because there were people I remember that'd be like, I had way more combat deployments than Brandon. I did, and it's like, but that has nothing to do with what we're doing, other than that you could write about these combat deployments. So there was stuff like that I just. But by and large, most of the guys from the site I really like, and we've had most of them on. Like we've had Coriolanus on the show. I can't say his real name. We've had. I don't know why I can't say this guy's real name because he's real on social media. We've had James Powell on the show. Like we've had Jack Murphy on the show, and by and large, it's funny. funny. Chris was saying to me before we recorded that I'm too nice. There are people I don't like, but by and large, I do get along with mostly everybody who's at the site, and I loved working for the site. So there was nothing cooler than working for the site when it was at its prime.
No. And look, we're larger traffic-wise than we were when you were with SoftRep. But I agree with you. There was a kind of swashbuckling, really fun time where we were like, the only show in town.
Yeah, we're pioneers.
Yeah,
and it was the best point in time too, because it was like the site was at its peak for me around like the time of the Bin Laden shooting, and people knew if they turned on CNN or Fox News, they were going to get like a little blurb on Navy SEALs. But people, it's crazy to think this because it's not as long ago as you would think, but no one really for the general public knew what SEAL Team 6 or DevGru was. Yeah. It was like an underground thing almost. And now it's like Disney is doing stuff with SEAL Team 6. Everyone knows SEAL Team 6. We were writing about it, though, from a perspective of like guys who have been there and done that. And it wasn't just a 2-minute or 30-second hit piece on Fox News. It was really in depth. And like that was what was so cool about the site to me. And
I think you and I talked about this before, like back to Jack. Jack, I have a lot of respect for Jack. Jack is an incredible writer. Where Jack and I had a disagreement was I didn't want the site to continue to be antagonistic towards the military. I thought it's causing us so much headaches, and oftentimes I was the lightning rod for a story Jack would write or authorize a story, especially like that Niger ambush piece.
That was,
like I woke up at 10 a.m. and my social media was just blown up. I had no idea what the hell.
And I could tell people this who are still mad at you over the Niger thing. It was neither you or Jack Murphy.
Yeah.
It was a writer who wrote under a pseudonym who actually hit me up on Facebook and was like, hey, what's the password to the YouTube? He works for the site. All right, he's going to upload something to YouTube. I didn't know that what was going to be uploaded was a ambush of Green Berets and it looked terrible, with a giant SoftRep.com watermark. People were furious. But you guys took the hit. And that was when, I don't know if I agree with this, but you were saying, all right, no one writing under a pseudonym anymore.
Yeah, no, I wanted accountability. I wanted accountability with the writing staff. Because when you write under your own name, it matters, right? You have.
But there's some guys who can't write under their own name.
But
they're active duty.
Yeah, but go write on your own blog. You know, you're not going to do it for us anymore. But the main issue Jack and I had was, and he quit over it, was I said I don't want to be. Look, we can do more and get more accomplished if SOCOM will return our calls because they don't see us as an antagonistic news organization.
No, I agree. I saw, being on the outside looking in, brother, we felt that way a lot of times. Like,
and I see Jack's perspective too, because Jack is very much like, he'll probably end up watching this, very much the investigative journalist.
Yeah,
and he'll
he's
always
a great journalist.
And he'll always say, I don't care about making friends with these people. I want to write a great piece.
But I'm looking at the big picture, and I want the military to look at us as a resource in a sense, like, look, we're not going to parrot anything that the community says, but if they see that CNN or the New York Times is reporting something just terrible, like they can come to us and we can get the right story out there, and see us more as an asset than an antagonistic kind of like, oh, we can't talk to them, they're just going to freaking throw us under the bus. I just didn't want that anymore because it was causing me a lot of personal stress. And I saw as an organization, we could do much more because they'll give us access. And now we're starting. We've been at the last SOFIC conference, and we're seeing like it's taken time to kind of rebuild that trust. But we're getting more people to start reaching out to us again. So it's taken a while, but that was the main issue that Jack and I had, and again, like Jack is an incredible writer.
Yeah,
like
as someone who's on the inside, I think it was a lot of issues, and it was a lot of issues for me. There were a lot of reasons.
But that's why we had this conversation. I remember it at Soho House, and I said, "Look, this editorially, this is what we're going to do. I don't want to go after persons by name and like trash this general's career." When it's probably much bigger than that. And we can go after the organization as a whole and say, look, the leadership of this unit or this organization needs to address these issues. but I don't want to like ruin a guy's career unnecessarily. And it was just a different philosophy towards how we were going to run the content on the site. And Jack's like, I don't want to do it. I quit.
Yeah. And
and I'm sure there was other things, but that was was the last thing.
I think to this day, like that is how he likes to write. He likes to really dig into things and really do in-depth pieces, and he's great at it. Hope you guys are enjoying this interview with Brandon Webb, a guy I go way back with. Before we continue and we get into a whole bunch of other topics, Fort Scott Munitions is a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition. It's designed to tumble upon impact in soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military-grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in all 50 states, but you could just go to the dealer locator on their website, or you could order right there at fsm.com if you want to order online, and you'll get a discount through us when you use the promo code BATTLELINE. So it's very simple, fsm.com. You don't have to spell the whole thing out, and use the promo code BATTLELINE for 15% off. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Peranto, Battleline Tactical, and the Battleline podcast. Once again, guys, go there now. They've got great gear. They've got ammo for whatever you're shooting with. fsm.com, promo code BATTLELINE. Also, one of our longtime sponsors, truly, I know through Brandon, and I met Sean Lake through Brandon, and that's none other than Bubs Naturals. And you were the first to tell me about what Bubs Naturals was doing with collagen protein and giving back to the Glenn Doherty Memorial Foundation.
Yeah, no, look, Bubs is legit. One of Glenn's closest friends, Sean, started it, and he's always had that. I feel like a lot of companies out there give lip service to kind of giving back, but Sean, like Bubs doesn't mess around. Like, it's a great product, but they are very serious about giving back to the community, which is
10% of everything goes back to the Glenn Doherty Memorial Foundation, as you'll see here. Yeah, and it explains Bub here, which you guys have heard about during this show, but Bub was an adventure seeker, a river guide, skier, Ironman competitor, fitness fanatic, chef, gardener, handyman, and an epic storyteller, and a national hero, a Navy SEAL who saved lives and was always the life of the party. And yeah, that's why they give 10% back to the Glenn Doherty Memorial Foundation, which helps out the kids of special operations, military veterans. We've seen them do stuff for like scholarships and that type of thing. And it's just a great product. I mean, all around. I've been using it since I learned of it with you. Yeah,
no, Sean, look, Sean and his partner, they've done a great job. Like, they're pros. I mean, Sean was a big marketing guy at DC Shoes, and he's a pro, man. He knows how to do it. And he's, I think one of the things I really respect about Bubs and what Sean's built is everyone wants to like run out there and do it all at once, but Sean's taken a very methodical approach to it and done things right. And I think, I know Glenn would be super stoked with what's going and the product and the way Sean's gone about it, but the product's amazing.
Yeah, I think when I first met you, it was just the collagen protein.
Yeah.
And then MCT oil powder, apple cider vinegar gummies, Bubs Brew, Hydrate or Die. So they've really expanded, and our listeners love them. We get great feedback all the time, guys. So check it out, bubsnaturals.com. Use the promo code BATTLELINE, and you get 20% off, and you support the show and all that. So it's bubsnaturals.com, promo code BATTLELINE for 20% off. And now back to the rest of this interview with Brandon Webb. Only reason I'm going to rush into this next thing is because I know Chris is limited time, and I think, at least for you, Chris, this would be the most important thing we get out of this interview is I know that Glenn Doherty was a great, would you say best friend of yours? Or
yeah, it was.
I met him weeks before Benghazi happened.
No, Glenn and I go way back to SEAL qualification training, and we were in the same platoon together. Then we were the two new guys that were selected because we're the better shots in the platoon. That our chief Dan came to us, said, "You guys are going to go to sniper school." And as new guys in the SEAL community, that wasn't a thing normally that happened to new guys. You had to do a deployment and get some experience.
Which Dan? Can you say his last name?
I don't
Did
think
he go work at Blackwater or anything like that?
I don't think Dan worked at Blackwater.
Okay.
His last name starts with a G.
Okay.
And he was a corpsman. Yeah,
Gotcha.
I'm thinking of when Chris Beck was on the show and said "Dirty Dan." Is that the same person?
I can say Simpson, Dirty Dan Simpson.
Yeah, no, he was different Dan.
Different Dan. Okay,
Yeah, different Dan.
I had much. He taught. He was a fucking great shooter. Dude taught me a lot about shooting.
And my Dan did too. Our Dan was amazing.
Must be the name, dude.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
But so yeah, Glenn and I went to sniper school. Like lived in a freaking dirt, mud, and piss together for 3 months. Did a platoon together. A whole 18-month workup cycle together. We both love the water and snow sports. He came to my dad. I have a really fun story. Maybe I'll tell you after Chris left. One of Glenn's friends that stayed with my dad in Wyoming when he was in Wyoming, because we used to go to my dad's house and ski. Glenn and I would go ski Grand Targhee. And this friend, the short version, my dad. I say, hey, Dad, one of Glenn's friends coming through. Can he stay at the house and ski? Yeah. Well, the guy got so shit-faced the night before, like hit on my dad's neighbor, got in a fight with one of the neighbors. And then my dad comes down. One of my dad's friends is going to take this guy skiing, and he knocks on the door. No one answers. He opens the door, and he's hit by this like sewage smell. And the guy had literally was in the kitchen, passed out, pants around the ankles, and had shit all over my dad's kitchen floor. My dad is like, hey, none of your buddies are coming here ever again. Like this is wild, man. But anyway, yeah, Glenn and I were very close. I had talked about him, or I talked to him about soft rep because he was supposedly going to Libya. It was going to be one of his last deployments.
And that's what Sean Lake said on the show with us. Yeah. He said, this is it.
Yeah. And Sean was living in Glenn's house in Encinitas, and we were in Glenn's backyard talking about this. And yeah, it was super tragic. And again, like the whole way, just the timing of that, and I was traumatized by it. I mean, his ex-girlfriend, who faked that she was a fiance at the funeral, tried to freaking come on to me when I was sleeping in his bed in the house. Like, it was just all sorts of crazy shit. And then like jumped on the hate Brandon bandwagon after I left. I got my truck and drove home at like 2 a.m. And just like all the media and the drama and everything, it was tough, man. I called, I don't know if Sean told you this, but I'd found out through one of my friends at the agency, because I heard the rumors and all his friends, like Sean included, was like, hey, what's going on with Glenn? And I'm like, oh, I heard it's State Department guys, like, and Glenn doesn't work for the State Department. And then I got into my Land Cruiser in the parking lot of San Diego Airport, the long-term parking, and I texted my friend, and he was like, hey, I'll call you in 5 minutes. It's not good. And then I just knew, and then he told me, and I cried for 20 minutes. And then I called Sean, and then Sean didn't believe me. He's like, look, I can hear it in your voice. And I was like, dude, you're going to get a knock at the door. I was like, just call me. And then he called me back, I think 30 minutes later. And it was like terrible. Media were camped out. It's like, no, just terrible. Like 6 a.m, camped out at the house.
Yeah, I was going to add, because that's, we didn't get it. Of course, we were all still working and we were at home yet, but how did that, is that what happened? Because that's what I heard, and I just never corroborated it. How did the media? I mean, they knew right then, and they were there like 24 hours like after the incident.
Oh yeah, it was. Wow. It was instantaneous. Like by the time I drove up to Encinitas, I think I went home and I went to see Sean. They were already there.
Wow.
And they were just, and then like knocking on the door the next morning at 6 a.m., the local news trucks, just trying. It reminds me of that song Dirty Laundry by Don Henley. It's like these made up, beautiful women with the freaking mic and the phone and the camera and the lights and, just ready for the juicy drama news story. And so I just helped Sean fend him off.
Was Sean's with his wife at the time? Because I know Sean's wife is a reporter, so.
No, he may have been engaged to Heather, But she was for sure like a serious girlfriend at the time.
Because I'm like, she'd be able to handle.
No, well,
people, right? So.
she couldn't want to. She didn't want to get involved because she definitely helped. Heather was extremely helpful as well, and her and I kind of handled the blocking and tackling around the media. And so I lived at the house a few days until the nightmare ex-girlfriend like hit on me, and then I just stayed out of the house. But yeah, it was. But that's how it happened. It was because of the second Obama election. It was highly politicized, as Chris knows more than anybody.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, it was just. And I had lost my best friend, and I'm like dealing with the press and everything. And it was tough. It was like a tough time. It took me a couple of years to get over that. I think that was harder for me. And also because being friends, and Chris knows this about Glenn, I don't think there's a person that would ever say a bad thing about Glenn. He just had that personality to him, where I look at my own self and in the community, like I figure I consider myself a good operator. I did a great job, but I either you really liked me or you fucking hated me, because I was the head of the instructor school. I had to send guys home, and I remember Eric Davis would be like, "Hey man, I got the student failed, but can you have the talk with him?" I'm like, "Yeah, send him on my office." It's like, dude, you didn't meet the standard. Pack your shit and get out of here. And you don't win a lot of friends that way. But I was just like cut and dry. But Glenn just had a way about him that everyone loved the guy. And being his friend was like armor. It was armor for me, because he would just take, it was like freaking a chest plate, Yeah. He was very protective that way. And when I lost Glenn, I lost that. And yeah, I didn't have my fucking body armor anymore, to be honest.
Yeah, I do remember when they came in, when they finally got to our place. And the movie actually did a great job showing that. And I remember, because I was like, "Hey, fuckers, welcome to the party, finally here." And I remember the team leader, great guy, not our team leader from our base, but our country team leader, who was a former Force Recon guy and was a contractor that went to the blue side. Great guy. And him and Glenn both looked up at me and went like this. Just like, it's like, yeah, they're here. But that, even then, even him flipping me off still made me smile. If that tells you anything about Glenn.
No, that's Glenn.
And after the fourth firefight we had been in, and it's just one of those things like, these guys, they know it's me. Glenn's flipped me off, but I know he's happy to be here, and he knows, he's like, "Tano, just shut the I know he's saying that under his breath. "Tano, shut the up."
Yeah.
There you see. But yeah, how did you, with the media and all that, I think they're, for being there right then, I mean, just no fucking ethics, no integrity. How did you fend them off? And how did you do that without losing your shit, without just going, I don't know how I couldn't do
I mean, I think what helped is I was working in the media, and I had friends in the media like Buck Sexton, Andrew Wilkow.
Yep.
And so I just knew, like, look, that they're just essentially doing their job, and albeit it sucks.
Is that how they rationalize it, though?
I'm sure they. I'm guessing.
I mean, come on.
But yeah, it's just. Look,
I've experienced it in the media.
I mean, it goes back to I don't know when Don Henley wrote "Dirty Laundry," probably in the 70s. But he's like, she'll tell you about the plane crash with a gleam in her eye. They're just, give me that dirty laundry, and they want to be the first to break the story, and they're kind of clawing their way up the local news ranks to go national. So I
mean, think of after school shootings, right? I mean, they're dealing with children who are experiencing the most traumatizing event, and hey, do you want to go on with Anderson Cooper?
Yeah.
Like that's how they work. So.
And
that's why I really don't like doing mainstream, and I consider all, I mean, Newsmax, Fox News, they're all in the same category to me, really.
No, it's, and I think the media and government in America need to change. Like, I think we need drastic overhaul of our political system, and the media has to do the same. I mean, we saw the media change at 9/11. It was when it became a 24/7 feed the machine news cycle. And, back to your question, Chris, I think I understood the media, and I just was like firm and would just tell them to fuck off over and over. I just told them, Like they would come and knock 30 minutes later. It was like, look, it's the same answer, you know, it'd be something different. But it was tough. You know, and I remember the funeral too. Like, I love Glenn. Glenn didn't want a funeral. He put it in his will specifically. We did it for his mom, Barbara.
And I'll mention this. I mean, you know, and Sean has mentioned it on the show, like, you guys paid for the funeral, not the State Department.
And that really pissed me off, Chris. Like, I was angry about that because
I was gonna. Can you go in? Because I was gonna ask you about that because we all knew that happened. We were all still working, but we knew that the State Department agency they weren't doing. We already saw the writing on the wall. They were going to do shit for us, and we knew. So
and what made it worse was that I saw the family paraded around the White House, and I think this is I think I get this right when I say Glenn's sister used to be super liberal, and you know, they got. After the family got invited to the White House, your son, your brother's a hero, they kind of had their press moment. Then they just cast the family off. And that's when I think the family were like, oh, wow, we're like, they just don't give a shit anymore.
They don't.
And then I remember Sean and I having this conversation, and he was saying, look, this was after we went to Boston for the funeral. He's like, look, Barbara's stressed out. Like, she had to cover all the costs, like $50,000. I'm like, okay, where's the life insurance money? Yeah. Where's the government? Because the family told me that when they went to the White House, they say, don't worry about a thing. We're going to take care of everything. And that was like, you know, Hillary Clinton saying that stuff. And it was just terrible. And I was livid. And especially... because then we started getting sources. We had a source with inside the State Department, an ex-military officer, that gave us Ambassador Stevens' personal diary, like, and was telling us like they were trying to cover up accountability around Benghazi, and that made it even worse for me. And I was like, they're trying to cover it up. They're f***ing the family over. This guy's a hero. I don't care who you want to vote for. This guy like gave his life for the country, and you can't even help his family bury him. Like, the mom is like stressed out because, you know, it was something around $50,000-$60,000 in funeral expenses. Yeah. And so, me and his friends paid for it, but I was pissed. And then, you know, Sean, hats off to Sean and the family. Like, they went after the agency, and I think it was who was the CIA director, Chris? Do you remember?
At that time, it was when it happened, it was Petraeus, and then it went to Brennan.
And Sean told me the story. They went to the CIA, and Brennan's aide, whatever, pointed out the fine print in the life insurance contract. He's like, look, you made the guy pay for life insurance. You mandated they pay for life insurance. Yeah. And then you're going to point to the fine print. It reminds me of these like Netflix, HBO privacy statements we sign. We don't even know what we're signing. Yeah. And you're going to not pay on a technicality. And he just said, look, there's right and there's wrong, and this is just wrong. And then he ended up, the CIA paid not the full policy, but they ended up getting a lot of money, and a lot of other families, I think hundreds of families that were in similar situations, left totally hanging by the government. They got paid also. So that's the silver lining in this, and that's what I know Glenn would be smiling down from heaven going, okay, yeah, there's some good that came out of this. Like, you helped a lot of families. And so but yeah, I was extremely pissed, and going after that book that Jack and I wrote, the Benghazi report. I remember Jack's like, we can't say definitive report. He's like, well, actually, until Chris wrote his book, it was a definitive report. He's like, I guess it was.
Yeah, I forgot. I know I read it. Me and Jack Silva, and that Jack's a pseudo. Yeah. If I told you Jack's real name, you probably know it. You'll know him.
Well, you would probably know already, right?
I can't say it here, but Brandon, I know you know who it is. Yeah, that was it. We were in Yemen though. I remember, and I remember we were like, "Are you?" And we saw Jack came into my room, and he's like, "That mother." Brandon, I'll tell you exactly. He goes, "That motherfucker." I'm like, what? He goes, "They already wrote in a book." I said, "What book?" We just got back. We both went to Sanaa, and I was like, "Oh shit!" And this is when the soft rep was the only thing out there. You know? And you guys, I'll tell you what, I know we're going full circle here, but you guys do eat your own. You really do. I mean, Rangers, we kind of do, but
the SEALs you're talking about.
Admit, SEALs, you guys are.
No, it's bad. It's really bad.
It is bad. It's worse. It's worse than Ranger Battalion. And Rangers, actually, we do pretty much take care of each other for the most part. We'll have some every once in a while, but yeah, I was like, he's like, what? How'd the book come out already? It's not even been 3 months. We're back.
Yeah.
We're back.
I remember the book.
Who's
By the way,
talking?
Chris, do you have to go? Because I know you have to peace out soon.
Bitch.
There's so much other stuff we could get to, but I remember the book was like you, Jack, and I think Corey Alanis, right? I can't say his real name.
Yeah. No, we wrote.
He was awesome, by the way.
We wrote the book very fast. HarperCollins published it. It was a New York Times best-selling ebook.
And honestly, we did read it. I was a long time ago, so I don't remember the specifics. But when I read it, it was hard for me to be too pissed. Because first of all, I wasn't a SEAL, so I'm not going to eat my. I'm not. That's you guys. That's your.
Well,
house.
Jack was one of the authors, so you could be mad at him.
But it was also really it was like, well, they really didn't get any. It was pretty tame from knowing.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't
over the top. I don't remember any embellishing going on.
No. And we didn't write the book to make money, or we wrote the book because they were covering the story up and driving a different narrative. And it was partly, I was pissed, and I'm like, the story needs to come out, and somebody needs to get held accountable. Patrick Kennedy, who I don't think to this day has been held accountable.
That piece of him and Lamb,
and we put that out there. We're like, look, you can be mad at Hillary Clinton, but the true kind of villain here is Patrick Kennedy. Yes. And the motivation was to get the foundation of the story out there, from a journalistic point of view, and it accomplished that. Like we were on freaking news 2 weeks in a row. Jack and I were on live news every night.
And it's like, if you guys weren't there, who's going to be there?
Yeah,
nobody. No idea what.
And that's the thing. About. Nobody had it. That's why Jack and I were on headline news every night. Hannity, you name it. Even NPR had us on because we were telling the story and mostly about people had no idea who Patrick Kennedy was, and that he was just, people at the State Department were screaming for help and increased security. And so we wanted to get the story out.
So wait, if Chris has to go right this second, I'll ask a really quick question. What do you think of the movie 13 Hours?
Oh, it's great. Yeah, no, I thought I read the book and I saw the movie, and I thought it did a really good job.
I do think we could have. I think, and we even said this, like Toby Stevens played Glenn okay. Glenn was a lot funnier. We even said that too. Like, man, you got that humorous part about the Siri thing, like Google and Siri. That was Glenn. But I was like, man, it's kind of machismo. Glenn is machismo. He's an alpha, but he was more. I was like, man, he's a lot funnier. I even apologized to Katie. I was like, Katie, I'm sorry. We tried to get Toby. That's just Toby Stevens. He's just
they made you funny. They made you pretty much how you are.
Yeah, but that's the thing is, though, is also not. I'm alive too.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and again, Glenn, God bless you, Glenn. That wasn't a knock on, but they got to see. That's how I was on camera. That's how I was around Pablo. They got to see. If Glenn was here, I'm sure that they would have got Glenn more accurate, but they could only go off of what we were trying to tell him. And honestly, Toby, out of all the actors, he hung around us the least. I don't think I think Toby had an idea of what he wanted to do in his mind, and he didn't really want to hear from us how we were like, hey, this is how he is. But that being said, it did get the heroism, and Glenn is a fucking hero, period. So
for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, buddy, you can talk about Patrick Kennedy all you want while I'm gone. Blast that piece of shit.
I know.
All right, man. Well, we'll. I mean, I'm sure we'll do this again at some point, but I'm going to continue with Brandon. We'll continue.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, man, Chris. It's been too long.
Yeah, I know.
Anything I can do, man. And if you want to bring the family over to Portugal, you got a place to stay. It's a great country.
Cool, and you come, and if you want to leave Portugal and come to Kansas, come on.
Yeah, to like middle of nowhere. But
thanks, brother.
We definitely want. I definitely want to talk about the book. Got to talk about the book. But before we do, the other thing I actually wanted to ask you about was, I know this from my time at the website. You spent a lot of time in Ukraine, so I figured like you could give a lot more insight than most of our guests of like what you think is going on there and your point of view on it.
Yeah, no, for sure. You want to kick it off with that?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess just a backstory. My first serious
Now
girlfriend.
by the way, we're picture in a picture in a picture.
Right.
But yeah, that's what people will see for now until someone comes in and changes it.
So yeah, Ukraine. I first went to Ukraine. I had a serious girlfriend in New York who was moved from Ukraine to New York when she was 17, I think, and she took me there to visit family members. I think a couple years into dating, and so. Yeah, I'd been to Kyiv and she did a great job giving me a tour, and we hired a tour guide and Ukraine, what people don't understand, Ukraine has been at some form of conflict with Russia since the Revolution of Dignity, which I believe was 2014, where they outed a corrupt regime, and it was similar to what happened in Iran and Belarus, where these youth college-age kids wanted their freedom and we're just tired of this oppressive regime. And I think a lot of this is driven by the internet and access to information. And so they had this big revolution, and it was a bloody revolution. They shot college kids point blank with sniper rifles, machine gun fire. It was this bloody thing. And they still, fortunately, forced this guy out of the country, fled to Russia. And then Ukraine kind of won its independence. Became truly independent. And then there was always this issue on the eastern Ukraine with Donbass. It was always been this kind of almost like a DMZ, demilitarized zone. And it was always light skirmish DMZ since 2014 up until Russia invaded. So I went there. That was my first time. I fell in love with the city, the culture. And then I went back. I was at, every year I go to this media event in Cannes, and I got introduced to an agency, marketing agency, and I started becoming friends with the owner, Andre, who invited me back to Kyiv. So I went back to Kyiv, and then we actually used that agency with the Crate Club. They made some commercials for us, and I made a lot of friends there. So I've been there probably 6 times, and on my final trip, my final trip, I was on the rooftop of this little boutique hotel called Bursa in the old town Kyiv. And I asked Andre, I was like, hey, we're hearing rumors at SOFREP that Putin might invade Ukraine.
And when was this? Around what time?
This was 6 months before the invasion.
Oh, wow.
6-7 months. And he was like, that's impossible. There's just no way. He just was like, that's crazy. So then he calls me back in January and says, shit, the U.S. diplomats just pulled out, and this is serious, and should I get my family out? And I said, yeah. And then they invaded in February. But he had got grandma, wife, kids, all moved out in schools. And it was crazy. And so, it's a complicated situation, and but I'll try and distill it. Putin largely was when he took power, he signaled that he wanted to be friendly with the West, with the EU, open up trade. And, I think Putin did a masterful job kind of overplaying his hand until he decided to full on invade Ukraine. I think in many ways, America radicalized Putin, because when you look at what America has been doing the last 20 years, Benghazi, right? For no one seems to know why, supported the overthrow of Gaddafi.
Yeah, and I've heard Chris talk about different ideas, they wouldn't adopt the euro, things like that.
Yeah.
By the way, since they're changing the logo, I think you need more water.
Yeah,
if someone could come in here and grab Brandon's water, but keep going.
So, but still, the guy's a leader, right? And he's toned down his rhetoric and cooperating with the U.S. What reason do we have to help overthrow the regime? And today it's still a failed state, right? So is a failed kind of leaderless state a good thing for North Africa? I don't think so. So does it promote American democracy? I don't think so. So we have that. We have Afghanistan, which I think now I was pointing this out in 2012. And until they pulled out, And I think the public kind of woke up and saw, holy shit, like what a waste. Like what, Taliban's out of power. Now they're back in power. They have $90 billion of equipment, not all of it's military hardware. They're like tootling around.
Did you see the video, by the way, of Biden when he was a senator running for president, and he said that was exactly what would happen if we pulled out?
End the war today, begin to withdraw all American troops. It will take a year to get the American troops out. It will take a year to get them physically out. Now, if you leave all the equipment behind, you might be able to do it in 7 months. And you leave those billions of dollars of weapons behind, I promise they're going to be used against your grandchild and mine someday.
I don't know. Have you seen that? Like the video made it,
I don't
around
even
there.
Look, I'm not a huge Biden fan. I think Biden has serious neurological issues. I think it's a testament to our government that he's being handled like he's a handler. Like people are managing him, the presidency, behind the scenes. But I don't even fault Biden for the pullout. I mean, Trump rightfully put it in motion, I think, to pull out. How it was handled was complete disaster. And what disturbs me is that there's no accountability. Like no one was held accountable for that disaster of a pullout. You and I and Chris could have planned a better withdrawal over a weekend with a couple beers, like honestly. And so there's no accountability. And what the military at the top has turned into is just a bunch of like rubber stamp yes people. And that's concerning. When you have a senior military leadership with zero accountability, because they've chased off a lot of the good officers, and I would say Dan McChrystal is one of them, like an amazing leader, and had misspoke off the record and got published by Rolling Stone and got fired by,
I remember that, yeah.
by Obama. It's just a tragedy, and so you end up with I study this in business school. Those are signals. When you send signals like that, then it changes an organization. And so now we have a bunch of kind of like just yes men and women within the senior ranks of the military, and that disturbs me. And especially when no one is held accountable. Like who is held accountable for the just disastrous pullout of Afghanistan? Nobody. But anyway, back to your original question.
Russia,
yeah. So you have these. So America has been kind of playing failed nation builder for 20 years. Iraq, we completely destabilized Iraq. Whether you could make an argument whether we went in and should have went in or not, but the fact is we did go in, and I'm a firm believer if you start something, fucking finish it. And we didn't finish it. We pulled out and we left a power vacuum that Iran filled. That helped kick off civil war in Syria, saw the rise of ISIS, and then all of this is happening in the Northern Arabian Gulf. And then guess what? Massive refugee influx into Europe, where the European Union was trending open border. Now everyone's like putting up fences and saying, I have enough refugees, you take them. And to take it a step further, I think that's one of the main causes of Brexit in the UK was the UK was going to be forced to take these immigrants that they saw potential terrorist threat. They were going to be forced to take them by being a member of the European Union. So they voted for Brexit. And when you look at cause and effect, it's all the cause is from America, like running around with no clear foreign policy strategy. Now, and at one point you have a lot of people lobbying. When this was happening in the civil war in Syria, we wrote about this on SoftRep. We said, okay, these senators who are calling for us to support the rebels in Syria against the Syrian government, which, by the way, is a huge strategic port for the Russians, and Putin was clearly backing Assad in Syria, and we're saying, oh, let's support the rebels. I'm like, you idiots in Congress and Senate, if you got out of your bubble of Washington, D.C., you would understand that those rebels are fucking ISIS. Like, a lot of them are terrorists.
Yeah, I remember.
We're going to fund terrorists. Like, that didn't work too well for us the first time around when we funded bin Laden and his buddies
You're thinking
in
back
Afghanistan.
to when, because I remember SOFREP covered this, where like John McCain called them moderate rebels, right? Is that what you're thinking back to?
Exactly. Yeah, that time period. So cumulatively, you add all this up and more, and you're Putin and Russia looking at America going, what the fuck are you guys doing? Now you have Trump in office, and Trump said this over and over, like, look, we should be allies with Russia. And I agree, Russia would have been a good ally, because he said we have a common enemy in terrorism. They're dealing with it, we're dealing with it. Look, we don't have to like have sleepovers, but let's get along and put some things in place. So I think then you get the fact where the media went so hostile against Trump and tried to tie him to the Russians, which is totally preposterous, but they were just grasping at things. And by taking that stance, made it impossible for Trump to imagine you're accused of colliding with the Russians.
Yeah.
How is he going to diplomatically reach out and actually have a conversation? Because it just fuels the controversy on the left. And so Putin's further isolated, and he's look at the West and go, you guys have created a massive mess in the Middle East and elsewhere, and Afghanistan and North Africa. We're like this schizophrenic neighbor that's just going around running amok. And then Biden takes office, and he knows Biden's old and, pardon my French, weak president. And that's a huge opportunity for him. And he's like, okay, I can do this, and America and the rest of the world can't do shit about it. And I think the one thing, especially I at the time, they ran scenarios like simulations, and I think RAND Corporation, which is a think tank in Santa Monica, ran a simulation as if Russia wanted to invade Western Europe, they would do so very quickly and easily. And I think that.
By the way, do you want me to pour some of this?
Yeah,
I'm like, I could tell you.
Yeah, I just got over a cold.
Oh, shit. And people watching don't know, it's like ridiculously hot here in New York today. It's like 90-something degrees. So, yeah. But keep going. I could tell. I'm like, I don't think they heard us. I don't know what's going on, but whatever.
No, it's good. Thanks. Lifesaver.
Yeah.
So, I think that what we understand now that it's kind of played out, like we've seen Putin's cards. Like we thought he had a much better hand than he did as far as mostly defense technology and military capability. And we're seeing now that they have a very top-heavy military. They cannot make. We wrote one of our guys, Julian, who's a former Marine, wrote an excellent article about the military command structure of the Russians, that they can't do anything. If you're on the battlefield, you got to just wait for some high-ranking officer to tell you what to do. Where in the American military, very junior people, 19, 20-year-olds, are making battlefield decisions because the commanders have given them the strategy and the direction, and they're free to kind of make decisions on their own in a very dynamic environment. Russians can't do that. They're just sitting there going, what do we do? When do we charge the hill? And so that's very ineffective on the modern battlefield. They also, the defense tech, they had built these new radios that piggybacked off of cell phone towers. And the first thing the Russians did in Ukraine was knock out the cell phone towers, which took out their own ability to communicate. And now they're having to pass orders on cell phones, which are being intercepted by the Ukrainians and then handed off to the New York Times. The New York Times did actually a really good piece where they translated all these intercepted cell phone calls and it just kind of showed more on the war crime stuff, the atrocities that were actually happening. But these Russian soldiers were actually talking about, look, no, we don't have food, we don't have ammo, we don't know what the fuck's going on. And so, the situation now, Russia and Putin, I think Putin made a massive miscalculation. He overestimated his own ability. He thought he would take Ukraine very swiftly. An invading country typically, historically, when you look back at history, which unfortunately we don't do a lot of, an invading army, it's usually a 3 or 4 to 1 ratio. You need 3 to 4 times the troops as the army you're invading. And it's about 1 to 1. And now the Ukrainians have better defense technology because of the U.S. and the UK primarily.
Yeah.
All the stuff that the Europeans have given them is mostly American hardware anyway. So they're better equipped. They're motivated to fight, like very, very highly motivated. So the last trip I went to Kiev, like you would think it's a Berlin because they had all this. They had these tech hubs and entrepreneurial, all sorts of entrepreneurial things going on. Like they were like, you're seeing their freedom in action. And so they've identified as Ukrainian. They speak Ukrainian. It's complicated in that a lot of the Ukrainians have close family ties to Russia. So that's where it gets a little bit complicated. But it would be almost like the U.S. going to war with Mexico, right? There's so many people from Mexico in the U.S. with family and blah, blah, blah.
For sure, yeah.
So it gets a little complicated. But
and then who does our friend Leo Jenkins fight for with him in Mexico?
Yeah,
we have a few guys who
probably
live in Mexico.
He'd probably be a bandito, man. Leo would put on which I don't blame him. Yeah, Leo's a great guy. But that's kind of the overall situation. It's an unwinnable war for Putin at this point. I think if he had a way out with dignity, and that's the other thing, you don't want to paint someone like him into a corner. You have to give him a safe facing out, or else you risk what does worry me is the use of tactical nuclear weapons, because he could do that. And especially with the current leadership in America and the European Union, there is no strong leadership. Putin, I mean, just run the thought experiment. If he dropped a tactical nuke on Kiev, and a tactical nuke is just a much smaller nuclear device, it would probably wipe out most of Kiev, but not destroy the entire country. But if he were to do that tomorrow, I think that America and Europe would bend the knee and go, okay, what do we have to do to end this? So, and I don't think that would be a good situation for Putin. I think the Chinese would be freaking out because you don't want some leader going around dropping nukes, haphazardly. So I think if I was to read the tea leaves, and especially now with this Wagner situation, right? I didn't even get into that. The Wagner situation, and look, Wagner controls most of Russia's interest in North Africa, and you saw like that guy was marching on Moscow, and he's still in Russia. Last he was seen outside of St. Petersburg, outside of the FSB headquarters. So this guy has like very deep ties into the military power structure, and that's why Putin cut a deal with him. We don't know what the deal is, but it showed weakness. And if you look historically, if any Russian leader has shown weakness like that, it doesn't end well for him. Yeah. And so I think Putin is on his way out, whether he gets assassinated or whatever, gets pushed out of power. I think it's the end of Russia as we know it. They probably further fracture off into smaller nation states. And yeah, it's just like, I think Putin was trying to cement in his legacy, and it's backfired. Yeah, and so that's kind of the situation as I see it playing out in Russia, and it won't end anytime soon. Like America was in Vietnam 11 years, and the funny thing is, like, Putin's used almost verbatim the same verbiage as we did to invade Vietnam, almost I think to kind of poke fun at us, like basically say "F you," like special military intervention or whatever he called it. But anyway, that's the long story on Russia, but it's complicated.
No, and I that's why I thought you'd be a good person to ask, because you've actually spent time there. I know SOFREP has guys on the ground there who are writing stuff. The last thing, of course, I want to ask about is the book. I mean, that's that's why you're here, and we are running out of time here. But yeah, Blind Fear is the third book in the Finn Thriller series. It's available now in all book formats, audiobook. You can get it on Amazon, get it everywhere. First two did amazing. I see the reviews for the third one are already great. John David Mann, who's been like your partner in writing from the very beginning. Almost all the things that you've written, he's been a part of.
Yeah.
So actually, I know that you were toying with the idea of doing fiction when we were still working together, and then it finally came out. What even inspired you to get into it? Because you've been successful with it. Like, was it seeing guys like Jack Carr who are just like your background doing amazing with it, or friendships with guys like Brad Thor, or what?
I think it started. I had the idea for Steel Fear back in 2012. And I talked about it to John back then, and he's like, wow, that sounds amazing. But neither of us had ever written any fiction. But we talked about it in 2012. I wish we had done the book back then. But
because then you beat Jack Carr.
Yeah. Well, like Jack, and I know his real name, but I won't say it. But he's done a great job. And he's a damn good writer. And I wish more guys would do that, put their military experience into a more positive direction. But for me, I just had these stories. I don't know. It was the same reason I got into writing. I was not ever a professional writer. I never trained to be a writer. I never went to school to be a writer. I think as a kid, my advantages were I didn't have a television for 5 years. I lived on a sailboat. I played Dungeons and Dragons. You have to use your imagination when you play D&D.
You're like Jack in that sense, by the way.
Yeah, we're like nerds. Yeah, and I think that it does make you a better writer because you have to like be creative and use your imagination. And so, I had the story of how the Finn series developed was before I was a SEAL, I was on an aircraft carrier, Abraham Lincoln, and we had a sexual predator on the boat, and he was assaulting women, and he never caught him. And I always imagine, like, what if it was a serial killer, like a Hannibal Lecter type, very smart person on an aircraft carrier where people die. It's a city. It's almost 6,000 people. It is a floating city. People do die of natural causes. They get blown off the ship. They jump off the ship. And so that was the story I pitched to John. He's like, oh, that's amazing. And so we just talked about it. And then I started writing it. I read Stephen King's book on writing, and because I'd never done I consider myself by that time a good nonfiction writer, but I didn't know how to write fiction, which is a totally different animal. It's like dialogue, character development, and so that's how it started. John, so I wrote about a quarter of the book, and then I asked John, "Hey, let's finish this," because to sell a nonfiction book like Chris's story, they could just go to any publisher and say, look, I was here, I want to tell a story. They'll buy the book on the spot.
Yeah.
But if you want to sell like a Tom Clancy novel, you got to turn in a manuscript. You got to like turn it in and say, here it is. Like, you got to show them you have the chops.
Yeah.
And so John and I had to write it on the side. So we finished it. We sold it in the pandemic to Random House. We have an amazing editor, Ann Spire, who made the book even better and said, look, this Finn character, it's a series. We were going to sell one book. And so
is Finn based off of you because you're Navy SEAL?
No, it's a blend. It's a blend of guys that you probably even remember. He has definitely some of my traits. I grew up around water and was a SAR swimmer before a SEAL, but he has like childhood trauma. Like he is very much a damaged kind of anti-SEAL, anti-hero kind of guy where he's dealing with his own demons. He had this like childhood trauma. He's got gaps in his memory. Even in the first book, he thinks he could be the killer because he has these memory gaps and he's being like framed for these war crimes. He's still trying to piece that together. And so, we follow Finn on his journey, and after he's kind of the hero of the first book, but then he's on the run. Like he's gone AWOL because the military are hunting him down, and he's trying to clear his name and put the pieces of the puzzle together very much in the same way that Jason Bourne by Robert Ludlum, the Bourne series, when Bourne got shot in the head and he had this memory loss. And so we're following Finn throughout right now. He's trying to pick up the pieces and put this together, and he's getting close to figuring out who all the bad actors are. Book 2, there's a great SEAL versus SEAL scene. We have this Boone character that's very much like the psycho in No Country for Old Men, which is a great movie. But yeah, it's been a fun series to write. We sold it to Whip Studios. It came down to Disney and Whip they make content for all the streamers, so it could even end up back on Disney. But who knows what's going to happen? The writer strike's going on right now. But,
sure.
You
don't want it written by AI. I think it's so weird.
Yeah, but they did. My agent at WME did a great job. So they didn't just like option the book. They're like, we have a showrunner and a screenwriter already. They cut a contract and paid them. They paid our production partner they contracted our production partner at Captivate Entertainment, which Ben Smith, he made all the Bourne movies with Matt Damon. Nice. So I feel like strongly it is going to be made. But these things take time. It's unfortunately going to be probably, a couple years before it comes out on a streamer.
Is the book a trilogy, or are you going to go on?
No, we want to. Yeah, we're still going to go on. We're concepting book 4 right now, so it is a. But it's
going to go because Brad Thor, what is he on book 20?
Yeah, no, but these things have a life.
Yeah.
Look, the Ludlam series is going. The Jack Ryan stuff is going with Clancy's storyline. So the thing is, when you have a really deep storyline and really good characters, they can live on forever. So yeah, we plan on writing a bunch in the series. I think this will be John and I's last collaboration as far as we'll continue to write the series together, but he's exploring projects on his own. I just written my first novel on my own. It's about 3 homeless guys at Penn Station.
Okay.
I'm looking at writing. I just kind of sketched out a sci-fi, military sci-fi.
So Finn is going to go on as just you writing?
No. John and I will continue to collaborate on the series. We'll write that together, but outside of that, we're going to, because now I have more free time, I'm going to explore, because I figure by now I've gotten it down. I know how to write fiction, and so I'm going to explore my own series outside of the relationship that I have with John, which is still a good one. It's just
which has lasted forever. I mean, he was with you for Red Circle, right?
Yeah, we just write so fast too, together. I can write a book in 90 days.
Yeah,
so it's I have time. So I just want to be. I like being creative that way. So yeah, I'm. This book I wrote about Penn Station, about these 3 homeless drunks. I think that's a winner, but that's not a series, right? That's kind of a one-off. But I'm exploring more if anyone's a fan of The Expanse, something like that, more sci-fi, militaristic sci-fi, where I can leverage my experience, but I also love sci-fi, and can stay up on technology but anyway, I'll be hopefully kicking off my own series with that, and it's still running software up till I get it. I find a good home for her.
Yeah, no, it's all. So once again, guys, it's Blind Fear. It's the 3rd book in the Finn series, available in all formats. Softrep.com, and then at Brandon T. Webb on Instagram.
Yeah,
at Brandon T. Webb on Twitter, right?
Yep, and then and Threads.
Okay, I'm not on there yet. So.
The other thing I do want to mention, because people ask about this. You can read any book as a standalone. We wrote it.
That's cool.
We wrote it with that in mind. So pick up Blind Fear. You don't need to read the other books first. I think it'll be even more fun to go back and read the previous 2, but you can buy Blind Fear, read it, and have a blast, not feel like you're missing out. And then still, you may miss some Easter eggs, but you can read it out of order for sure.
Cool. So check it out, guys. And now we don't hate each other. Yeah. but I haven't seen the guy in 4 years, so it is cool. But yeah, it's funny because Chris was like, I know someone's probably going to give you shit for just having Brandon on, and I've never felt that way, man. I mean, to me, being part of the site was some of the most awesome times of my life, and we didn't get a chance to fully get into it, but going to SHOT Show those first years and people just recognizing me, I never would have thought that would happen. Not great. Even at the show, off the strip. People would, hey, you're Ian from SoftRep. And we really had such a big thing going. Yeah. We hung out plenty of times outside of just working together. It was a true friendship and stuff like that. And that's why, look, there's definitely stuff with how it ended, which I wasn't happy about. But at the same point, I always felt like you gave me an awesome opportunity. You've written about me in a positive way in your books. So I was never one of these people who was going to go on social media and have negative things to say about you. Maybe privately between people, I'd be like, wow, I wish this would have gone differently. But publicly,
an asshole.
But publicly, I was never going to be that guy. I don't think that's ever cool to do. And I'm sure someone's going to be like, well, you disagreed with them. Of course I disagreed with them on plenty of things, but publicly, I would never be that guy.
Glenn and I disagreed on many things, but you still have this kind of common thread and mutual respect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thanks, guys. As always, subscribe to us if you're not already. Leave us a comment, and we'll be back in studio Tuesday with Brad Thor. So that'll be really cool.
Brad's a great guy, and he, shout out to Brad. He has been a huge supporter, which was shocking to John and I. We realized that this kind of fraternity of thriller writers are very supportive, and Brad has been a true gentleman.
He's the man.
I'd go to war with Brad any day.
Awesome.
That's all for this episode of Battle Line Podcast. But we're always posting new content on social media. Follow us on Instagram at Battle Line Podcast and on Twitter at Battle Line Pod. That's an order. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes up every Tuesday. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. Believe in yourself. Face all challenges head on. And as always, never quit.